August 4th, 2025. The Baker Fairburn Hockey Show is live. I'm your host, Kris Baker. You can find me on X at Sabres Prospects. With me, as always, is your Sabres beat writer for The Athletic. That is Matthew Fairburn. It is summer. Bills training camp is underway. Bills fever has definitely hit social media. But Matthew, where would you rather be than right here, right now? Happy 100 years on this earth to Marv Levy, by the way. Matthew Fairburn, I'm going to kick it to you, and then I'm going to come back and do all the plug stuff to kick us off. Because before we get into all that, whatever, I just want to hear how your summer's been. It's been forever since I've seen your face on here. We've talked on the phone a few times, but you're looking pretty svelte, looking pretty good. You look fresh. How's summer been for you?
It's a hell of an open from you right there. You are not rusty at all. That was a good pull. Happy 100 to Marv Levy, absolute icon. One of the he's an inspiring human at 100 years young, doing what he's doing and still sharp as a tack. I talked to him last couple years ago and was still recalling details from a game 25 years earlier. So he's pretty awesome, but summer's good. We've been, dormant here on the Baker Fairburn Hockey Show for a little while. This almost feels like the start of a new season. Is our third season, fourth season? Third.
This will be our third season.
This will be our third season.
Completed
so it kind
our
of feels
second
like
season. Yeah.
We had our break. This is episode 1 of season 3. Had a nice vacation, got up to the Adirondacks with the family. Some good relaxing by the lake and starting to get back into hockey mode here, but enjoying. We've had some great weather minus the wildfire smoke today. We've had some A+ weather here in Western New York, so not thinking too much about the hockey rink, but definitely starting to think about September. The schedule's out, so kind of starting to map out my life a little bit and see what it's going to look like, but definitely enjoying the last few weeks of summer here.
I am ready to get the season going. I'm not sure I'm ready yet to start ripping off shows every week. We had a different plan. We did want to do a bunch of summer shows, but then summer happens. And I think you get into it and you realize it's nice to have a little breathing room. It's nice to have a little space. You're doing things with the family. You have a little bit more time to be a dad, doing some trips. I've been sucking on the golf course, but I don't care. I'm having a ton of fun. I got some travel coming up. We're going to squeeze some shows in more frequently, but I think we're going to kind of roll into it a little more slowly. So not everything always goes to plan, but for our loyal viewers and listeners, we did have the best of intentions to maybe pre-record some shows. Just didn't happen, but hey, we'll get to some of those ideas maybe during the season to kill some Olympic break time that we have, or maybe we'll just kind of hold them off until next off season. But either way, thanks for the diehards for popping in. We have some decent numbers here already. Again, on no notice, pop-up show. That's our style. So that is Matthew Fairburn. I'm Kris Baker. Thanks everyone for joining. On your way, and if you could, please hit that like button, subscribe to the Sabres Prospects YouTube channel. You can find the Baker Fairburn Hockey Show on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. And you could please leave a 5-star review. That will never change. I'm going to do that. I'm going to be asking, groveling, begging for likes and the little subscribes. Hit the notification bell too, by the way, so you know when we go live, because we never let you know.
I was going to say that's the only way
when
to
we're
know.
here. That's right. It is.
There's no announcement. Pop-up shows only,
bell.
Baby.
That's right. Massage that bell end there on the YouTube channel. But hey, so without the formalities are done here. By the way, we're beaming this out also to Twitter and on X. If you're over there, come join the people that are in the chat. Join your fellow fans on the YouTube channel. Hoping for a good show tonight here. I am rusty, by the way, Matthew. I can already feel it. I think just going in hot, pulling out the little Marv Levy thing.
You've been thinking about that this afternoon.
I wasn't thinking about it, man. I wasn't thinking about it. I was just looking at you. I'm like, it's football season. This guy's a football guy. What the hell? We'll go down that path. I haven't been looking at social media much, but I did see, I think Marv sitting there with Andre Reed, and you're right, man. Sharp as a tack and whatever. It just worked. But anyways, back to hockey tonight on the Baker Fairburn Hockey Show. The Sabres currently have the 19th greatest projected cap hit, some improvement, little over $5 million in cap space. Are they done making tweaks? I guess we'll discuss that. Sabres released their schedule. I think we should kind of get into that a little bit. I know, Matthew, you have some thoughts on how the early season run could go for the Sabres here. The Sabres held another press conference. I think that was last week. We'll dive into that a little bit. Spoiler, I don't really care. But first, the defense and the goaltending seems to be glued together. Some recent signings, the Sabres tidy up all their business with Bowen Byram, returning to Buffalo on a 2-year deal. Connor Timmonss inks up for 2 more years here in the NHL, his first 2 with the Buffalo Sabres, and Devin Levi signs a 2-year contract as well. So I think let's start there as the Sabres have finished up their housekeeping, I guess, have a little bit of space. We can kind of let some of those topics run together here, and I'm sure they will. That's our style here on the Baker Fairburn Hockey Show. Matthew, let's start with Bowen Byram. They avoid arbitration. I think they sign him 2 years. I think it's a deal that works for both parties. Do you agree? Let's just start there.
Yeah, I liked that it didn't get to arbitration. I think for both sides, not that it would have gotten messy, but I think despite how out in the open the trade talk was, there was a good back and forth, good understanding from both sides, it felt like, throughout the summer, and that Bowen Byram could show up to camp with no hard feelings. But we know how those arbitration hearings go, and sometimes that can lead to a little bit of resentment and a little bit of bitterness. And I don't think the Sabres needed that. I think we could all see when you zoomed out, if they weren't going to be able to trade him. Look, if he wanted a long-term deal, if that was what they were working towards, there would have been some hint of that at any point throughout the summer. So we know that wasn't really the avenue that they were going down, or that Bowen Byram wanted to go down. So when the trade value wasn't there and arbitration was looming, you're thinking, oh, arbitration comes, Bowen Byram's going to take the 2-year award and go to UFA. It's like, well, the Sabres have plenty of money. Why don't you just find the number, give them a 2-year deal, and, speed up the process so you have a better idea of what your picture is. Does it tank his trade value? No, I don't think so. I mean, I actually think if I were an acquiring team of Bowen Byram and he was an RFA, I don't really know what I would do there. Would you have done a long-term deal? I think there's still some question about exactly what type of player Bowen Byram is, in part because of the role that he's played or hasn't played, maybe is the better way to say that, because you don't know, is this year a guy that can be a number 1 that deserves to be paid like that? Does he deserve to be paid the way Jacob Chychrun's being paid on a long-term deal? So I don't know that a team is really looking for that. And now you have a 2-year window to trade him if you want to, or a 2-year window to see who he is, how he fits, and maybe come to an agreement that keeps him here beyond those 2 years. Convince him that Buffalo is a place worth staying beyond these 2 years. But you could trade him before the season started if you really want to, although I don't know that seems like, a likely outcome at this point. Or you could trade him at any point over the next 2 seasons, depending on how things go. I think there's plenty of flexibility. And if the scenario happens where he walks in UFA in a couple of years, you got 2 years of a pretty good player. Yeah. Players walk in unrestricted free agency pretty often. You don't always need to trade a guy because he's going to be an unrestricted free agent. I'm okay with the number. I'm okay with the term, and looking forward, frankly, to seeing how this whole group fits together, because it's probably the strength of their team right now is this 6 that they have on defense, how it's currently constructed.
$6.25 million for 2 years. You're paying the player for what you think he's going to do, not for what he's done. Just turned 24 in June. This is a very young player. So you made a comment like, what can he be? We don't know. And I think that's where maybe I don't know, you and I, but I think just the fan base in general, maybe that got lost a little bit in the discourse is how young he is, because he came in and played so early and made an impact. Then he comes to Buffalo. And, my whole thought on Byram is he hasn't played a lot of games here still, like he's still kind of finding his way, I think, in this organization. And 2 years, things can change. I think that his value, I think he's going to be worth the money. I do, especially if they kind of just staple him to Dahlin. I think it's a good compromise for both sides. Walks himself to UFA, to your point. You have flexibility now to do things. I mean, could they get off to a poor start and maybe use him as a piece of currency to address what's ailing the team? They can. We'll see what happens. It's going to be a storyline here for the rest of his time, just because of how this whole thing went down.
That's
right?
A 2-year deal, and it's unrestricted free agency is looming. So that's not going to go away. And to your point, how this all happened, the fact that Kevin Adams was out in the open talking about possibly trading him, it will continue to hang over him. I think he can handle it. I don't think that stuff bothers him. I think he's a pretty laid back guy off the ice and understands how to keep things in perspective. I'm curious to see how this all works for Bowen Byram. Like, what type of player does Bowen Byram become? Because to your point, he is young at 24 years old and has had some really strong highs in his career. And the injuries, I think, changed the course of his development for a little while. And now, he stayed healthy last season. He's been here for a bit. And more importantly, probably if the rest of the defense can stay healthy around him and his role can be at least consistent, even if it's not as big as he wants it to be. Look, top pairing defenseman next to Rasmus Dahlin is a pretty good role. Nothing to scoff at. But obviously he'd like some power play time because that's how you pile up points and that's how you get paid. Still had 38 points last year, though, career high. And I thought at times was, one of their best players. Not every night, not consistently as consistently as you would like, but there were stretches where he looked like one of their best players, particularly at times when Dahlin was down and he had to carry a little bit more of the load. So this should, in theory, on paper, be a strength. You have Bowen Byram and Rasmus Dahlin. You have Owen Power and Michael Kesselring. You have Mattias Samuelsson and Connor Timmonss. Those 6 in those roles slotted that way, Mattias Samuelsson on your third pair, you feel better about that than you do about having him up top. So Bowen Byram was kind of the key puzzle piece of the offseason, because if you had gotten rid of him, it required more moves to make everything fit together. And it is an interesting, the fact that he was the biggest puzzle piece of the offseason and he stays put. And the only real big move was JJ Peterka going out, Josh Doan and Michael Kesselring coming in. It does bleed into the larger conversation about what looks like the final product of Kevin Adams' offseason entering year 6. More could be coming. We've seen trades in August. Half the league is sitting on a big pile of cap space. And so there could be trades coming before the start of the season. The Sabres have room to maneuver. But this feels like the team that you're going to see in September when training camp starts. $5.2 million in space, roughly thereabouts, depending on who makes the NHL and who ends up in the AHL. And is it? I guess that's probably the next logical place to bring this conversation. Is it a talking point still that they're not spending to the cap? Because they were saving the money for the offer sheet, right? That never came. Last year, they were saving the money for the RFAs, some of whom they never signed, or one of the big ones they traded away. The summer before that, it was not spending money to not block the young players. But I sit here. Dan's right. It is about time. I sit here on August 4th looking at $5.2 million in cap space, and I think that's fine. I can't sit here and really, first of all, it's the least amount of cap space they've had entering a season under Kevin Adams. So progress. But it's right in the middle of the league. Because the cap is going up so much, we have a lot of teams, some of whom are good, some of whom are trying to win. You know, Carolina is a cup contender with more cap space.
They have over
than
10
the Sabres.
million. They have closer
You
to
know,
11 million than 10 million. Yeah.
There's quite a few. I mean, it's half the league that has more cap space than the Sabres. And I will say you have to factor in the 4.4 million dead cap hit of Jeff Skinner, right? So that is cap space that is being taken up on a player who's not on your team. I say that to say that the actual spending, you know, you have to kind of do that calculus with that dead cap number. But two things. One is how many teams have this money unspent because the cap's going up. And my colleague at The Athletic, Thomas Durantz, covers the Vancouver Canucks and regularly appears on the radio out there in Vancouver and does the PDO cast with Dmitry Filipovich. Great show. He, I thought, described it appropriately when he said for years there was a cap crunch in the NHL, and now there's a talent crunch where there's all this cap space and not enough guys to spend it on. And in the Sabres case, the pool of players you can spend on is even smaller because of the issues that have been hammered into the ground at this point in terms of attracting outside talent and no trade clauses and the like. So as I reflect on the offseason and the money not spent, the money spent and the money not spent, I wonder what was the alternative to get you to the cap? What was the alternative that would satisfy the crowd that wants more spending, that thinks the 5 million figure is egregious? And I just don't see it personally. I don't see an alternative offseason outside of maybe extending JJ Peterka that and not making that trade that gets you there and makes people any happier about the roster that they see. So between just the reality of the economics in the league right now and how many teams are left in a similar position with money that they don't really have anybody to spend it on, like nobody really hit unrestricted free agency this year. Mitch Marner did, but he didn't because he signed, Vegas traded for his rights. Nikolai Ehlers, in terms of big ticket options, those were the guys for the most part. Brock Besser didn't hit unrestricted free agency, signed the day before. So your big ticket items weren't really there. Trades are the other avenue, of course. And there weren't a ton of those either. Noah Dobson got traded, but I don't think he was extending here. And so the aggressive moves, I think if you want to criticize spending, it's a multi-layered, multi-season critique that is valid. And some of the excuses that have been handed out have been weak and bad strategy and bad excuse making and not really entirely valid. But this year in particular, I'm not getting tied up in the spending discourse. I'm sitting here saying, all right, this is the team. This is the team that's going to define your career, Kevin Adams.
Yeah.
It won't define Lindy Ruff's career, but it's going to define the end of Lindy Ruff's career, this chapter of it. And so, all right, let's see what you got.
So I'm with you. You're not just going to spend money if there's, just to spend it and there's nothing really to spend it on. You don't even have the assets to make an offer sheet. You have to make some moves anyways, because anyone you offer sheet, like a Mason McTavish, for example, I think still sitting out there, right? Ducks have plenty of cap space, by the way. Ducks have over $20 million in cap space right now. After they sign McTavish and get it done, they're still going to have 10 million. There's a thought. Okay, so it's not an alternate take because I agree with you in principle. And I think anyone who's out there bitching that they still have $5 million and have it spent to the cap are just bitching to bitch because that is in vogue the past, we'll call it 5 years. Okay. With the Sabres coming out of COVID, right? Maintaining flexibility. Say you get off to a 3-8 start and Kevin's like, I learned my lesson. I'm going to act quickly. Having that flexibility is going to be good to have if you get off to a bad start, whatever it is. However, with all the players that have Buffalo, presumably, on their no move list, I would still consider, with certain players that we've talked about probably 17 different times since March, Brian Rust, for example, Raquel, if that's your cup of tea, I would consider spending the money and using up more of that space, depending on what asset you move out, to avoid getting off to a poor start.
100%.
And you know that you probably still have a question in your top six. You have bodies, you have guys. Do you have the team that is going to get you off to a 10-5 start? I would say probably not. So it's something to think about. I like having flexibility, but if you have a guy that you can get the guy, yeah, but right. So why wait?
Well, and here's the thing with flexibility. Like, flexibility was brought up in September last year, right? You know, we need flexibility to sign these RFAs. We need flexibility to make an in-season move, and they had $9 million in cap space, and it never got spent, and they just sat there and rolled out, you know, a team that clearly wasn't good enough. So the flexibility piece of this requires an organization and a general manager willing to use the flexibility. That flexibility starts now, though. I think, to your point, like, you don't wait for the 3-8 start. It's why the $5 million, I'm okay with it, is because if Rust or Raquel, if the price changes, or if you feel like you can, you know, Dubas gets back from the cottage and he wants to re-engage in some of these talks, and you have the space to do it. Flexibility, though, true flexibility, are we going to sit here and say that, you know, the Oilers, the Golden Knights, the Panthers, the Rangers, the Stars, the Lightning, the Maple Leafs, all these teams that are pressed up against the cap, like, don't have flexibility? Because the best teams that are really competing for cups, they make their flexibility, right? They find a way. So you don't need to sit on $5 million going into a season to be quick on your feet. But it's not really a bad situation if one of those players shakes loose, whether it's now, whether it's September, you know, a few months into the season, whatever it is. But you got to be willing and able to act, and that has not really been one of the hallmarks of Kevyn Adams' career as a general manager.
This is the problem with the question marks that you have. Yuri Kulik is a young player. Is he going to go to the next level? If they don't make a move, you can argue that they're banking on a lot of hope. Again, not seeing Josh Norris. You don't know. There's a little bit of hope there, even though we've seen Josh Norris be a very good NHL player, multiple, you know, seasons in his career. But there's still, I think, an element of hope there with Norris. I wish I knew what the asking price was that Pittsburgh wants for those guys. I wish I knew, because I don't know if I could stomach a hardline stance of saying, no, we need to go into the season with flexibility. Because then there's a good chance, probably a 70% chance that you're going to hear, yeah, well, we try to get guys, but we're on the players no move list. So if you can get a guy at a fair cost, I would consider using it. I understand having flexibility. And look, by the way, you're competing with teams 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's 10 teams that have more than 10 million in cap space today. You're competing with those guys.
Here's the thing.
I mean,
so Raquel has a modified no trade clause, 8 teams, and has that for the duration of the 3 years on his contract. Rust's trade protection expired, but he has 3 years on his contract. So thinking about this from the Pittsburgh point of view, for Kyle Dubas, who's under no real, he doesn't seem to be urgently looking to compete, right? You know, he's got a bit of runway here, and probably is one of the only teams in the league, the Penguins are, that is in that frame of mind. Not that every team is going for it next year, but there's not a lot of teams that clearly are not. And it seems like the Penguins are one of them. What Kyle Dubas has to do, you know, what's Kyle Dubas's motivation to trade Brian Rust in August is my thinking. You have to motivate him with a really good deal. It has to be a strong deal. Now, you could say Rust at his age may never be more valuable. That might be true, but there might be a sweet spot for Dubas. Is he more valuable at the deadline? Maybe, right? When teams are, you can widen the market. There's been some injuries. Teams are a little bit more desperate. Maybe. Is he more valuable next summer when the cap goes up again? And that's the game he's playing. And so
he's smart to hold him, Matt, by the way. Like if another team has an injury to a top 6 forward, Dubas has a great asset that can plug into almost any team.
And he's got no
smart
rush.
To hold him.
Right? There's no rush. So you got to blow him away a little bit. And that hasn't happened to this point in the offseason. We know Dubas was collecting draft picks. So if, the draft has passed and you haven't blown him away yet, I think, to your point, he might be waiting for an injury, waiting for something to happen in season that drives the price up. Wait for Russ to get off to a hot start with Crosby, whatever it is. I don't think his value is going to plummet the more he plays. Now, if you wait till the final year of his deal, you're diminishing the asset a bit, but he's got 3 years. There's not a lot of reason for him to take the first thing that's offered, to take, a mediocre package from the Sabres just to make the deal. So it's got to be a pretty damn good deal to make it happen. And outside of Rust, your options, what are the options? We haven't seen too many
hockey
other guys in trade rumors and, RFAs that are having a tough time getting signed. We don't have too much of that this summer. So it makes for maybe a waiting game, for Kevin Adams, but you can't wait too long, to your point. I don't think you can start 3-8. I don't know that you can climb out of that if you're this team. 3-8 may seem like not much, 11 games of an 82-game season, but it's enough of a hole for a team that has proven that when it gets in a hole, it tends to dig it deeper before it starts climbing out.
Yeah, I think they're going to find out. I think that, they're going into the season as is. I do think they're done making tweaks. I think it's pretty clear. I think you agree with that as well. Let's go back real quick to the blue line. I want to kind of finish up the Byram discussion. I think this is one of those times where the public opinion, the fan base opinion is right on the money. Byram will play with Dahlin. Kesselring will play with Power. Samuelsson, Timmonss. The one thing that I like to think about, and this is, it's August. It's first week of August. You can throw out all sorts of crazy shit, right? Lindy's going to have a full training camp this year. It would behoove him to try some different combinations. But it's very hard when you look at the lineup to see different combinations, different permutations of partners, because someone would be dropped down to the bottom pair that likely deserves to be in your top 4. Are you with me on that? You think that as the kind of the general population has structured it, and by the way, Byram having a great season with Dahlin helps everyone, helps his trade value, helps the team. Everything works there, right? Do you see a scenario where it's not Byram and Dahlin?
When everyone's healthy, this looks like what it should be, because you have 4 guys who should be playing in the top 4 and you have 2 guys who should not. I think it's as simple as that. When you try to shoehorn in other combinations, it's not a bad idea to get a look at some of those, because an injury will happen that will require some flexibility. But when you start to mess around with different ideas, like, oh, maybe Samuelsson could play up, or maybe Timmonss could, bump up, and you could. I think what you want is your 4 best defensemen hogging a ton of minutes, and Samuelsson and Timmonss playing a more sheltered role, and killing penalties and having a very clearly defined role. Something that's been missing, I would argue, throughout the team building strategy or philosophy, whatever you want to call it, over the last 5 seasons is, we've talked about collecting talent versus building a team. And part of that is clearly defining roles for players and getting them to buy into those roles. Like Matthias Samuelsson, you are a third pair defenseman who kills penalties. That's different for him mentally going into the season than Matthias Samuelsson. You will be playing with Rasmus Dahlin. It's a completely different approach to the game. And so it's part of why I like the roster better than I did at the start of the offseason, because Josh Doan is a guy who has and understands his role. Has it been defined yet? Whether he's going to play on the second line or the third line, the fourth line even, I don't know. That part hasn't been defined, but the way he plays the game, how he impacts the game, like he understands that, and it's a skill set that fits a need for what this team has. Michael Kesselring is able to go to the rink in the summer understanding, okay, it's probably Owen Power, right? But this is a guy that's like, I am preparing to be a top 4 defenseman and handle everything that comes with that, and probably playing with Owen Power and get an idea of what that might look like. Think about a few years ago when Peterka, Jack Quinn, Dylan Cousins, like all these guys are just coming into the NHL and just all basically fighting for the same role. Like, I'm the top 6 scorer. I'm the guy that's going to fill up the net. I'm the guy that's going to get power play time. I'm the guy that's going to get that next big fat contract. And it's like, now they're starting to understand how to build a team. And so when I look at the blue line, that's what I think about, is that these guys at the bottom of the lineup. And I think Samuelson's going to be in the headspace to really accept that role now and hopefully have a little bit of a fire underneath him to, prove himself again and play a little angry, prove himself to Lindy Ruff and this fan base. And Timmonss, I think, just accepts that role generally. Look at his contract and, the history of his ice time over the last few years. And so you don't have too many guys. Like, even when they signed Connor Clifton, it was kind of unclear, right? It's like, is this a guy that's looking for a bigger role? Is this a guy that's going to be a top 4 guy? They were playing him with Dahlin his whole first camp. I don't know if you remember that. All the way up until about a day before the season started, he was playing with Dahlin, and then they switch him, and he's playing third pair with another righty. The whole thing was a mess. So this feels a lot more clearly defined. Are they missing a piece or two up front? Maybe, but it feels like some guys, they have a team a little bit.
They do. No, I think, to your point about Dome, by the way, like Dome could play anywhere. It's the same reason why Benson looks good up playing with skill players like Tage and whoever the center is that week, Kulik at the end of the year. You need to blend skill sets. You got to put a dog up there with the guys that can rotate into open ice and soft spots and score some goals. And that's going to be a fun. These are all the things, like, these are the reasons why I want to get camp going. I want to just see what happens. I want to know how it's going to shake out. The reason I ask about the D is because I'm actually excited to see a crazy amount of preseason games, because we didn't really get to see it. And we did. It was stupid last year. A bunch of Amerks games at home while you were out gallivanting, shitting your face off, by the way, for a couple of days in the Czech Republic, right? You remember that?
Puking
that was
my
fun.
guts out.
Yeah, you were. I don't know if the fans knew that, but now they do.
I was playing hurt out there.
You were in the hurt locker, but Dolly. Okay. So here's the thing. So, we've been talking, or the organization's been talking, like, Kevin says, I haven't done a good job getting Owen a partner. What if Dahlin's Owen's partner? Could Byram and Kesselring work? I want to see it in preseason, I guess, where I'm going. I do think it'll be, you know what I mean? Like, mix and match those 4 guys. Cause I love the idea of your role playing defensive pair with Samuelsson and Timmonss. Timmonss probably going to be thankful to have a guy that is actually like defensive minded like himself. He spent so many of his minutes in Pittsburgh once he got there playing with Carlson.
He's like an
had to probably
winger.
Just drive him nuts. Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? So at least I like that idea of having them steadying the ship. They can play whatever, 18, 17 and a half plus whatever penalty kill time. But those 4 guys on the top, I want to see them.
You could mix and match. Like, if you're mixing and matching, that's what you got to play around with, those 4. Because you want those guys to be the minute hogs. You're not gonna And we've seen Byram with power, and it's not great. And so really the only other combo we're talking about is what you're, because, Dahlin with Kesselring is theoretically an option, but it requires you to go back to Power and Byram. Power and Dahlin they've used before, when they're, trying to, push for offense in certain game situations. So those guys would have some comfort together. I think the playing styles are actually not a bad match in some ways. Owen's got a little bit more calmness to his game than Dahlin does, but I still think the odds-on favorite is how it's been sketched out, right?
As do I. I'm just throwing it out there.
And
we should discuss it.
And they should mess around with some different things to see, because you're not some sort of established team that has, entrenched pairs for years. You're trying out a player in Kesselring who, over the course of a full season, hasn't played that role. And, in that top pair, I mean, you're banking on definitely some improvement from Owen Power, right? After the way he played last season. And then with Byram and Dahlin, the sample size is pretty big from last year, but it's not massive. And so there is some projection baked into what you've got, but there's a lot of teams, maybe not, I don't know how many teams around the league, but quite a few, I'm sure, that would look at this decor and swap it with their own.
Timmonss number, 2 years, 2.2 AAV. You like it?
Fair, reasonable, kind of what the projections all had him for, and you get him for a couple of years. I mean, you were paying Clifton 3.3 last year, so you save 1.1 million and potentially get a better player. I think Kevin Adams thinks he's getting a better player.
Byram 6.25. You like the number? I asked you earlier, but I think I said that I think you liked it. I didn't get a firm.
I mean, he was making 3.8, and the cap has gone up since he signed that 3.8. It's almost, the equivalent of a $5-ish million contract for a guy that's going to play on your top pair. I mean, I'm thinking a $5-ish million contract on the old cap, as we try to contextualize some of these numbers. I started thinking about that in terms of some of the projections for the next batch of contract extensions that the Sabres are going to be paying. And I saw Benson's projection from AFP Analytics was in the 7 million range. And I thought, people aren't going to like that. No. But when you run the numbers, if he signed that deal when Tage, if Tage signed his deal now, or no, what am I trying to say? If Benson signed this deal when Tage signed his, it would have been more like a $5 million deal, because of percentage of the cap back on the $83 million cap or whatever it was. So, but some of those numbers are going to be eye-opening. But when I think about it in terms of Byram's, I think, he was already making 3.8, so it's not a huge raise, and he's a top pair player at the moment, so not a bad deal.
Don't have to spend a ton of time on this. Devin Levi, AAV, 812.5. Going to make 775 in the first year, 850 next year. You like that number? That's
team friendly.
It's very team friendly.
I was expecting north of $1 million, so I think it was pretty team friendly. Probably indicates this guy's going to be back in the AHL, again, and unless injuries happen. He needs 29 games.
21
or 21 games.
21 games to get to 60.
To get to 60, which will be the number where he has to pass through waivers. So I don't know if he hits that this year, if all goes according to plan and there's no injuries in that. He probably doesn't hit that number. I believe, I have to double check this, but I believe next year he will have to pass through waivers regardless because of how long he has been in the league. He'll have been in the league 4 years, provided that first year counted as an accrued season. So that would, combined with his signing age, I think mean he'll have to pass through waivers next year, but that is a next season problem.
So Kevin presumably is boating, kind of hanging out, getting a tan, living the lake life. With Levi done now, right? He's going to take a little break. Got a prediction you got to read on the Tuch situation?
Tuch, I think I don't really have a prediction, but I think Tuch wants to be in Buffalo enough that a deal gets done. But I don't have a good enough read. You know, I like the projections I had at the beginning of the offseason, which was like if he wants to push for 8 years, I think he'll get it. I think he should get, frankly, almost anything he asks for within reason. He's got that much leverage and he's that important, and the Sabres are in that bad of a position. But I think the one thing I can say that I think is a good sign for the Sabres is that Tuch hasn't really soured on this situation, or at least on playing in Buffalo and being in Buffalo. Like, I think he likes it here and is willing and open to this long-term extension. That alone, I think, is, a big variable and probably fear that a lot of people have had, right? Everything that's happened, Alex Tuch 1 year away from UFA. If they lose Alex Tuch, then what? But I don't think they're anywhere close to that point, which means that Kevin probably should not spend too much time on the boat. He should probably, unless Alex Tuch's on the boat with him and they're, figuring out some of the finer points of this contract, because I would not want to risk playing even 10 games of it. Like, I've seen Alex Tuch, and this is natural. Like, I've seen all these guys. Like, I've seen what they look like in September and then what they look like in December, right after some of the losing sets in. And that's not when you want to be negotiating with Alex Tuch, right? You don't want to let this thing linger. So I'd say if he's open and willing, like, the time to strike is now. And yeah, it might cost you. So what? The cap's going up, and you just got rid of JJ Peterka, one of your RFAs that was going to cost you a boatload of money. So 8 by 8.5, 8 by 9. I mean, 8 by 9 would be probably the ceiling, I think. Bring the term down. Maybe you can bring the AAV up, or maybe you could stack some of the money in early years and kind of bring the AAV down a little bit. But Tuch gets paid a lot of money up front. You see a lot of teams structure contracts that way with a lot of signing bonus. But I think he wants to be here, and so they should get a deal done. I mean, they are badly hurting for some good PR, and so that seems like a good piece of August or September business to boost your approval rating.
I was just thinking that would be a really great tweet. They could undo maybe some of the meme factory action that's happened after that press conference last week if they had Tuch and Kevin on a boat, both wearing, captain's hat, the skipper hat, to announce the signing of a contract on Chautauqua Lake. Yeah, I don't know. I kind of agree. I think they should just get that done. I don't know what they're waiting for. Don't get a little, don't get too cute if you're the Sabres. Give him what he wants within the reason that you can pay, within reasonable terms that you can pay. Maybe that's an issue.
Well, it could be. Clinton says Tuch feels like a player whose skill will not age well. I kind of disagree. I think it depends if he can stay healthy.
I used to think that. I don't anymore. But I hear Clinton. I know what he's saying.
I get the point as well, and had some of those thoughts. But you texted me a stat at one point about how many tipped goals he had last year. It was like 12 or something, right? 12 or 13.
He and Zucker were near the top of the league, but Tuch led the league in tip goals. Yeah.
I think, especially playing 82 games last year, like if he can stay healthy and start to take care of his body into his 30s, I actually like his chances of being one of those really useful mid-30s players. But so much of it depends on taking care of his body and like staying healthy, because I think injuries were his biggest problem the last few years. I know speed is a big part of his game, but he's really efficient with his work rate out there. I feel like he knows how to spend his energy. Like he's really wise about how he plays the game, and especially with his reach, and he's just a really smart hockey player. So I think his game could age, and I think the way he plays at the net gives him a real chance, to be useful and score a lot of goals as he gets older. So I don't
Scoring
worry
in
too much
a
about
variety of ways. He was a guy that had his reputation was purely scoring off the rush when he was a young player. He did have 12 goals off tip shots last year. Zucker had 8, tied for third in the league. And I like them as line mates this year. Again, I like that chemistry. Find him a centerman. All right. I mentioned the meme factory. Sabres had a press conference last week. You were down there. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because I don't care. It's naming rights. I don't even know why they did the pomp and circumstance the way they did, honestly.
I think it was KeyBank.
Yeah, probably.
Probably wanted
Take care of your sponsor. Yeah, well, okay.
a little bit of a show, right? Like that was my read on it. Like,
I guess.
I don't know that the Sabres would have been eager for that sort of show in the middle of summer for any other reason than that.
I don't see this. The reason I didn't want to go here is because it kind of dovetails into a whole arena conversation. And I wanted this to be a quick show tonight. So I'll give you the floor for a couple minutes to just share your thoughts on that press conference. I don't care though. Congratulations. The name of the arena is
that
changing.
part of it
yeah,
really didn't register much for me. Like the lease is still the issue, right? The lease is still the news. I think it was, it was a bit of a funny press conference.
The memes were funny, by the way. They were funny.
Good.
They were good, man.
It's kind of a weird position to be in. It's very 2025 to be sitting in the audience at something like that and like in real time be thinking, oh yeah, this is going to be a meme. Yeah. Like the doors opening and the whole thing and Terry putting on the helmet. I mean, you just knew like, that people were going to have, especially in July, right?
What was your favorite meme in the series?
The opening of the doors. So, the palm trees were good, right? Opening the doors and the palm trees were there.
Yeah,
the opening the doors
were
great.
Yeah. My favorite was Billy Lano.
That was
in his Billy Bano shirt.
The banner with how many days it's been since the last playoff game or something, I think was my favorite. But all of that aside, it was kind of just like an interesting, to be down at the rink for something like that in the middle of, like somebody was like, are you mad that they, dragged you downtown in the middle of summer for this? And I was like, no, I got some laughs and also got, I think, some useful information after the fact. Mark Bolenkars and Pete Coelho spoke, and it was like, okay, we don't have news here, but we have some on the record comments about what's happening with the arena and updates to the arena and different things of that nature. But I understand Sabres Twitter is always going to be ready with the meme machine, right? They're just ready. They don't ever disappoint. Yeah. And if you serve them up, material like that, they're going to go to town. But I think a lot of people were also geared up for some real news, and so when it didn't come, there was some frustration and angst, and that's how people deal with it. I saw, KeyBank Sabres thought it's probably naming rights, right? But I did wonder if we would get a little bit more firm news on the lease or upgrades to the arena. And that's why I say this felt like a KeyBank driven thing, because there wasn't a lot to share about the arena. And so you're not going to call a big show just to say you have not much to share besides the naming rights. And the naming rights does nothing to ensure the security of the team in Buffalo for many years to come and all that. It's, a nice gesture on KeyBank's part, considering it's not exactly the first brand that you want to be associated with these days. And there's probably some legitimate fear about losing sponsorship dollars in different areas of the business, but this is a nice deal to get done. But the lease expires in September, but it can technically be sort of extended on short-term basis. They can keep kicking the
5
can down the
years
road.
even.
Right.
That was the most enlightening thing.
Yeah.
Really, it was about
5
extending
years,
the
even,
flexibility.
yeah, a couple of different ways they can go about it. There was nothing concrete on updates to the arena. And some people have been really wondering what the next phase after the roof and the scoreboard, and there was nothing really concrete there.
This is how we win part 2.
That's what I'm thinking, right? They need that's how they win. Then they got to get back to work, right? And keep doing it. Mark Polenkars did share that the roof was the responsibility of the county, but Terry Pagula stepped up to pay for it. So, I mean,
nice guy.
That's not bad.
Philanthropic.
Yeah, saved some taxpayer dollars.
Magnanimous.
Right. Yeah. And
nice gesture for after he got a pretty nice financial deal with
he
the
got
football team, so I think a roof is nothing, right? Yeah.
I think maybe that played a role.
Okay. I think he made out
played
okay
a role. Probably did. Now that I think about it.
Yeah.
It's a good point. But what struck me about all the conversations about upgrades is that Polenkars jumped right out and said, we got to get this football stadium done before we talk about any of that.
Because we can't multitask in this city? Is that the
I
deal?
just thought, man.
This county, excuse me. Yeah.
Sure. But it was like, this doesn't really help this idea that the Bills are more important than the Sabres, right? It doesn't really.
Yeah.
It doesn't make people feel any better about that. No. And I think to an extent, that was the tone of a lot of it. It was like, well, we got to get, let's get this football stadium built. Let's get that behind us. And then nobody's in a position to be talking about the lease right now. And it's like, well, the lease is almost up. Like, you should probably be, or the upgrades. And it's like, I don't know, like they need some. And Pete Goelli said that they're not going to go and put in a bunch of new seats before they know what the long-term future is of the building in general. So a lot up in the air, but not a total nothing burger, because even getting some of those on the record comments gives us a jumping off point for some of these conversations as, it unfolds with both the lease and the current state of the arena.
For anyone that thinks that the Sabres aren't important, has Terry Pagula ever put on a Bills helmet in public?
It's a good question. He put on a hard hat probably for the stadium. He likes putting the helmet on. He did it for Penn State, I believe, also. I think there's old pictures of he and Kim with the helmet. He can't help himself. Hockey guy, he sees a helmet and he's like,
hockey guy.
I'm ready.
Just saying he never messed up his hair with a Bills helmet.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to. I'm gonna Google it. Terry Pagula and a Bills.
I just did. I can't find it.
You can't find one.
But I'm sure this, our intrepid chatters will find something and nullify that. But yeah, of course I kid.
No, and you know what? He's always just. Actually, this is a good point by you. I see a couple pictures of him holding it, so he's had the opportunity. That's all he had to do with the helmet, but he was like, hockey helmet, gotta put this on.
It's not like he has this oversized cranium, I'm sure there's one that fits. He just hasn't put it on.
It's a good point. Guy does love hockey.
He does. Before we go, because again, we're going to be coming up on an hour, and I don't think that we need to go crazy here on August 4th, 2025. We do thank everyone, by the way, for hopping in here on no notice. If you could, please hit the like button if you haven't already. Matthew, the Sabres did release their schedule. I know, Soupy, there are no quick shows on the Baker Fairburn Hockey Show. I know. I'm going to try my damnedest tonight, though.
Soupy asked this question before we move on from the press conference. I meant to respond to him on Twitter. I think he asked me this on Twitter also. Asked if Kevin Adams was at the press conference. I do not know for sure. I did not personally see him, but there were team staff like on the second level that I didn't get a good look at. But PR had mentioned like team staff is up here. She, had mentioned it to the photographers and video people if they wanted some shots of team staff. I know there was, strong encouragement to get as many staff out there as possible. I don't know for sure if he was there.
Interesting.
But not part of the triumvirate on stage. Obviously, that was more city and county folks and Key Bank, and it was more of the suits.
Was
than the
Sabretooth there?
hockey
Maybe
type.
Kevin was in the Sabretooth costume that day. Maybe
Sabretooth was there. I don't know, because Sabretooth gave me a fist bump on the way in, so I don't know if that was Kevin in there. But Sabretooth was there. The Bandits mascot was there. I forget his name. And Key Bank has a mascot. He was also
really?
there. Yeah.
Oh, wow. We
Don't
always
know his
joke
name
back in
either, but he's just a giant key. So
he's just a key. Yeah.
yeah.
It's creative. We used to always joke back in the day that Russ Brandon was in the Sabretooth costume.
Maybe he was in there last week.
Sabres released their schedule, while the NHL released schedule. Pretty front loaded with some home games there. It's also kind of a lot of games to start the year.
Well, they got like a month off in February. Got to jam
I know,
them
it's
in
pretty
somewhere.
wild how it's going to be tricky. Yeah. What's your do you have a take? You have a schedule take? You have any games you're looking forward to? I always love those games. They're like, we're looking forward to this one. This game here in February. Like, what? How do you even know how the season's going to go? Nathan McKinnon could be hurt. Yeah.
It's different than the NFL schedule. Even the NFL schedule, I kind of laugh when it's such a production when it's released, because the opponents are already known. It's even funnier in the NHL because it's like you're going to play everybody. You're going to go to every building. Yeah. Like it's the same every year. But football, I get that people plan their falls around, some of these games, and you're wondering about prime time and how the home games fall and holiday games. There's a lot of variables with that. But a hockey schedule, it's like there's going to be 82 of these puppies, and you're going to play every team home and away. So it's going to look kind of like it always looks. But for the Sabres purposes, what I found interesting is I believe it's 10 of the first 14 games are at home.
Yeah.
Not necessarily easy games, but not impossible either. It's Rangers, Bruins, Avalanche, Senators, Panthers, Canadiens, Red Wings, the Leafs twice, the Blue Jackets, and the Bruins. That's October. Both of those Bruins games are on the road. The Canadiens game is on the road, and one of the Leafs games is on the road. The rest is at home. And then you go into the start of November, and the first 3 games in November are home as well. Capitals, Mammoth, and Blues. Like, you've got a chance. They were good at home at the end of last year. Like, really strong in their final 15 to 20-ish home games. They were bad at home 2 years ago, so they sort of started to turn that around, even without, the traditional home ice advantage that they enjoyed, 15 or 20 years ago in this building. Maybe even you can go back 10 years. They still had the home ice advantage. It's eroded a bit given the attendance. But I look at that and I think, what a chance to get off to a decent start, but do it in front of the home crowd and try to win some people over.
Yeah.
Try to create some good energy in the building around this team. And I don't expect them to have great attendance out of the gate, but I think you can. It's hard in October. It's Bills season. The Bills are going to be good. Bills will get off to a hot start, and Sabres won't be front of mind in October and November. But if you get off to a hot start, then, I think you can pique people's curiosity. And more importantly, this is a team that needs to start strong. I'm looking at that Thanksgiving benchmark like we did a year ago and saying, you got to be in a spot at Thanksgiving, and you got to look at the early part of the season. If you're Lindy, you got to have those standings up in September, right? You got to set the tone early. And I think about, in comparison to last year, you mentioned that Lindy Ruff's going to have a real training camp, and we're going to see some, real preseason games. From a travel perspective, to not spend the, first 2 weeks or the last 2 weeks essentially of your preseason, and then that first weekend of your regular season on the road all the way over in Europe, I think is to your benefit, to be sleeping in your own bed and, even if you look at those road trips, it's Boston twice, Montreal, and Toronto.
Yeah.
All very easy, very quick trips. So it's an opportunity. Whether they take advantage of it or not is interesting. And the flip side of it is in December, shortly after. So last year we looked at that 10-game stretch they had at the end of November, I think it was, as one of their easiest stretches because December got tough. Well, this year, December is looking like a grind again. They start with a home game against the Winnipeg Jets, and then they're going to be on the road for a 6-game road trip.
And it's a weird one.
It'll span almost 2 weeks. Yeah, I think it's their longest.
Starts in Philly, and then they go west into Western Canada.
Yeah, they go Philly, Winnipeg, Calgary, Edmonton, Vancouver, and Seattle with a bunch of days off sprinkled in there. The back-to-back, Calgary and Edmonton. But just being on the road that long is it's going to be a lot. And
I think that's the one that people have circled. Like, oh, here we go. Hey, if they survive that,
they
go
survive
500 on that trip and have a good start at home.
They've done okay on that trip before.
They have.
They've had their moments on that trip, but they've got some other tough games sprinkled in. They end the month with the Blues and the Stars on the road. They've got a road game against the Devils. So not the easiest month, and we know what happened in December of last year. So it feels notable that December is looking like it's not going to be a cakewalk. And I mean, if they can just avoid, 13 games in a row would be good.
Speaking of the number 13, by the way, if they got to cap the losing streak. Speaking of the number 13, the 13th game of the season is a Tuesday night. You got the schedule open in front of you? Who are they playing?
The 13th game of the season.
It's on November 4th.
Oh, yeah.
Home
Old
game
friend
against
JJ Peterka.
Utah. That was the first one that I looked for. Think they'll sell that out or no? Do you think people just don't, that early in the season, do they not have enough juice? Like, because, they're going to boo the shit out of them. It's like, how many people will be there? 11,000, 15,000, 19,000. I'm curious about that one.
I don't think they will sell out. Another interesting number that came out of last week's press conference is that Piquelli said they have around 9,000 season ticket holders. Not great.
That's
not a good number. Around 9,000 tells me that it's probably a little below also because it would have said more than 9,000.
8640.
Right. Yeah. So that's a pretty bad number. It's not.
That's
it's
the
down
danger
again.
Zone, actually.
It's down again from where it was and not good. So will they sell that game out on a Tuesday night? Probably not.
One can hope. I like when Buffalo gets mad, Yeah,
it's fun. I mean, this isn't a Jack Eichel level situation, though. This was sort of...
It's true.
This was quick. This was like quick, sudden, quiet, just like, I'm out of here. And it wasn't all that messy. Those who are in tune to the situation will boo him. He deserves to be booed, I think. I'll say that.
You think someone will run him?
I don't think so. No, maybe. I don't know. Maybe if there's booze,
little money on the board,
right? Little money on the board. I don't know. Like, I don't know. This is if you're the type of fan who boos, this is the night you boo, right? Like this guy.
That's why I wanted to bring it up just for fun,
Well, and it's interesting that they play. He comes to Buffalo before the Sabres go out there, so
it's like only a couple days apart. Yeah.
I'm wondering
8 days apart.
Do we get a JJ Peterka tribute video, or do they snub him?
I'm gonna go snub.
I think they should snub him.
Yeah,
but do they
I think they will snub him.
You think they will?
Well,
I think they're gonna give him one when it comes down to it. But
they didn't send a tweet.
They didn't send a tweet. They really didn't do a whole lot. There was no thank you, JJs. There was none of that.
They'll do something, but it'll be very short.
I think they should snub him.
I'd love to see it. I think that it's kind of just gotten crazy. It's gotten out of control. How every guy that,
it's gotten a little crazy. I didn't have a problem with like Dennis Gilbert got a little love, during that Dylan. I was okay with it because it's like this guy stood out there and tried to fight Matthew Olivier, to
he's a pussy.
Defend his team's honor. Like I was like, I'm okay with him getting a little hometown kid, like getting a little tip of the cap, like. But I think you got to use them strategically, right? Like you got to use your snub here. You don't want to snub the wrong guy, but use your snub. Like, do it. Plus, you're going to throw that thing up there. Don't you think people are going to boo? Did they have one for Jack? They probably did, right? I mean, I don't remember.
Yeah, I'm sure. I think they did.
I wasn't at the game or anything, so I don't remember if that was a talking point. But he did a lot in the community, and like he was a big. I feel like they probably threw a video up there for him.
Chat, did they do a tribute video for Jack Eichel when he came back? Let us know. Let us know in the comments section on this video once we close it down, because we are pretty close to closing it down. We're an hour 5 in, Matthew. And I want to kind of wrap it up. I wanted to ease our way back in, work out the jaw, do some lip smacking on the mic. Get that whole thing going, make it happen. But I think we're good. Anything else? And anything else you want to talk about to take us out?
That was our agenda, right? That was
that was it. Yeah, the idea was a quick show tonight, everyone, just to kind of clear the pipes a little bit, knock the rust off, ease our way back in. Season's going to be here before we know it, man. Prospects Challenge is going to be the 12th?
Something
a little
like
over
that.
A month from that.
Then camp right after that.
And it's like go time. I was trying to map out, like, there's no rhyme or reason to the schedule. So it's like us having a regular schedule that we're going to commit to doing shows is going to be all over the place again. So again, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell, because it's going to be all over the place again this season. That's how it's going to be. But you can count on multiple shows a week, starting probably at least mid-September. But we'll cram another one in. Maybe they'll make a trade tomorrow. Maybe we'll be back tomorrow night. You never know. We like to keep you guessing here on the Bacon.
Do we want to compete with Hard Knocks? Hard Knocks debuts tomorrow. Are you excited?
I'm not afraid of Hard Knocks. Yeah, well, yeah.
You're not afraid. I'm
not afraid of Hard Knocks. No, I would prefer to avoid it. I would like to watch it.
I'm interested in watching it.
Binging update, by the way. Binging update. Forget football. Everyone else talk about football. Let's stay away. I'm in season 4. I'm almost done with Succession. Department Q on Netflix. 1 season in. Awesome.
Never seen it. Never heard of it. I'll have to
new show this year. Yeah. Your Friends and Neighbors, finish that up. Boom. Can't wait for season 2. Excellent show. Watching Untamed now. Untamed. It's only 6 episodes. I can handle it. Where I'm 2 in. It's okay. Not bad. But yeah, I'm like on a roll, man. I'm like watching TV. That's why I gotta get out. I gotta get out of here. I gotta go sit down on the couch and get a show in before I go to bed.
Yeah, I mean it's
Smoke, by the way, on Apple TV about an arson investigator. Never met like a lead character that I hated more, and they do it on purpose. Like they purposely made him just a jerk off. But it's not bad. Not a bad show. I don't know. It's like I don't know if I'm hate watching or what, but. Gonna wrap that one up. New episodes come out every Friday. Watching
new
TV,
experience.
I feel normal.
For Kris. He's like,
I'm finally getting value out of having all these streaming services and every single channel that Fios offers. I've never,
Well, you've gone through all the shows that are like can't miss, right? Like all the bangers, and then I'm
all through the Bear. Yeah.
So then you hit a show like Smoke, and you're starting to hit these shows where you're like, I think this new experience. You're like, I'm hate watching. Feels like hockey season all of a sudden. It
does. I've been hate watching this team for a while. No, I kid. Matthew, do your plugs. Let's get us out of here so I can go watch some TV.
You can find me at theathletic.com/Sabres. I'll have some stuff coming. I think if anybody's watching this, they probably saw my article on Josh Doan that ran while I was sunning in the Adirondacks. I'll have some other stuff I'm working on. It's a good time of year to dig into some longer term projects and some different stories. So you can find me there, as always. Best place to find me.
Josh Dog. I'm Kris Baker. You can find me reclined in about 10 minutes, contemplating maybe rewatching Severance. I'm waiting. I'm trying to push that
This
off.
is a good call out, by the way.
No, I haven't yet.
That's a good call out there.
That's one I'm going to have to watch solo, because the person I watch all these TV shows with is like already been through all that. So it's
True Detective is.
That's why I'm doing Succession
Really
solo. Good. But yeah, no, I know. I'm in on that. All right. Well, hey, everyone, again, thanks for hopping in here on this lovely Monday night. I'm off to Minnesota this week. I'm off to Firestone early next week. I got a couple trips to Chicago, but we will fit some shows in along the way. That's a promise. You got to know. I can tell you got your finger on the trigger button. Is there another chat that you're trying to throw up, or can I get us out of here? You had that
No,
look.
you're
I know.
good.
All right, I was gonna say I know your body language. I know. Okay.
Cantor said he's watching Stick, and I'm watching Stick as well. I haven't gotten too deep into it.
I watched the first little part of the first episode. I don't know. We'll see.
It kind of makes that show. I watch that show, and I think I could write a TV show.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's the problem. Maybe that's why I haven't watched it.
There's not, but I also have only gotten a couple episodes in, so maybe there's a little more depth. We'll see.
All right. Well, for Matthew Fairburn, I'm Kris Baker. Hit that like button on your way out if you haven't already, and we'll see you again very soon. TBD. Have a good night.